Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into episode 6 of
Boom.
Three Brothers Talking.
And counting.
Counting.
What if we did these out of order and did like 6 before the two, like in between the two parts? Just to
I meant
break
to
it up.
say, welcome to episode 27.
You're really limiting how we release these.
What if we want to change it up?
Yeah.
Just feeling different today.
So, strictly speaking, this is episode 6.
This is the 6th time we are recording. Actually, it's a 7th because there's 1 or 2 episodes that we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's already been one episode that is lost because it was bad. And
I kind of want to listen to it just to see how bad it was.
Yeah.
And there was another episode that's already been lost because we got 20 minutes into it. And only one microphone was recording. And that was
David.
mine.
And
So,
newsflash, it was David's.
yeah. See how
Andrew and
that
I made a
works?
lot of great points, and David's like, well,
He made
we don't
sure
hear these.
that his commentary was in there.
Well, if you want your mic to record, then you should run the mixing board.
It's
and
a
all that.
sacrifice Andrew and I are willing to make.
Yeah. But this is episode 6, and 6th episode you've heard from us. Thanks for listening. Three Brothers Uncut Conversation about life, God, anything else that comes up. And today, we're talking... Oh, by the way, we should do the whole intro thing. I'm David. I am your lazy host.
I'm Andrew. I'm still your sniffly host.
I am Jeremy. I'm your hydrated host.
Oh, Jeremy's hydrated.
Drinking water.
There you go.
8 glasses a day keeps the doctor away. Is that a
Does that to
thing?
make us feel bad for like...
Not
No, 'cause
having
I already
water.
had-
I've got a glass of water right
We've
here.
had water throughout
You
the
can-
evening.
Okay, I'm pairing it up.
You're paired.
Yeah. But Andrew still got the sniffles, but I'm lazy just because I didn't think of a description of what kind of host I am. It's only 6 episodes in.
We're all
already giving up on that.
We're all disappointed. Actually, I got asked about that. Like,
That's
oh, you're
probably
doing this
gonna
thing,
die.
huh? And I'm like, well, we kind of loosely do it.
Well, we did it 3
We
times.
do what we want when we want. That's the great thing about this. We just have fun.
Exactly.
That's what
I
we want
wouldn't
to do.
really call it a thing yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of a thing. It's
Yeah.
not a thing.
Tonight, we are listening.
Could be in the morning if they're listening
It
to it.
could be in the morning, whenever you're listening to us. We are talking about things that we love or don't love with RC. So, these are going to be topics.
That is RC Sproul.
RC Sproul
Well,
is what we're getting
Way
to.
jump to the end.
That's the big
Oh.
reveal.
Sorry.
But first is a couple other things. So, RC soda. Did you guys like RC soda or not?
I'd rather not.
No.
I'd rather
No?
pass. I wouldn't hard pass it, but I'd rather just drink water.
See, I wouldn't say I don't like it. I would just drink nothing
I
as
can't-
opposed to it.
I can't remember the last time I had RC Cola.
Well, I can't either. I will
doesn't-
say,
I feel like it doesn't have the amount of sugar or something. It's
probably
off
not.
in it, so like
Yeah.
it's just like a little rougher to
I don't-
actually drink.
I don't know what it is about it. I think that it was just like the part of my personality that likes to be different from other people and likes to be a rebel and this stuff. Liked RC Cola because it was like, you know, it's nobody else's favorite. You only got it like at the bowling alley or something weird like that. Like
Whoever couldn't afford
You know,
a Coke
yeah,
contract.
exactly. Whoever didn't want to pay to license Coke. So yeah, that was the thing for me. The other thing, RC cars. I think that was something we all kind of liked. I don't know.
I think we
Andrew?
were boys.
I
we
loved
loved cars.
RC cars.
Yeah.
I remember when we
You
were
did.
little, we had like we got some of like the really fast ones
Yeah.
that we tried because we had a spare lot next to our house.
Yep.
We used to build ramps and
and we
get in
used to
trouble
build
for it.
we used to dig out ramps and
And
like
they'd
just
mow.
run these things as fast as I could and
Yeah.
just like get maximum air and
It-
like those things. I mean, we had some that really could
Really
get
flew.
going.
So
Yeah.
there's a spare lot and it had the entrance, like whenever you're going up near a corner and there's like a walkway or a sidewalk and a
It's as if
crosswalk
they
or
were
a
going to
street.
build a crosswalk.
They were going to build a crosswalk, but they
Or
never
a
did.
house.
So there's just a little, the curb is just kind of cut away for a second. And we thought, hey, that's a perfect place to build a ramp. Because you have
Bike
this
ramps,
long road
Anything.
to get your bike up to maximum speed. And that's what we did most of the time.
Or your motorized car.
Or your
Yeah.
remote control car. And every time they had to come by and mow that lot, they would knock on my parents' door, our parents' door, and they would say, please tell your boys not to do that.
Can you stop doing that? Really screws up our mower.
Yeah, but we kept doing it.
Yeah.
And I
Almost
just
without a cause.
Yeah.
exactly. We had the mini RC cars. I don't remember what they were called.
Like the
but you
really
remember
small
those?
ones. That
Really
you,
small ones. That
those were pretty cool.
Yeah.
modeled after
We
real
only
cars.
they only made like 2 of them run different frequencies.
Yep.
So we always like had one of
Oh,
us
they
that
were
was
the
kind
little
of stuck.
Mini Coopers.
Yeah, we had the little mini Coopers.
Yeah.
from the
So
Italian
basically,
Job.
the 2 people could control one car
Yeah.
and see which one would
Yeah.
win.
That was awful.
It was
And
always whoever turned on first got
And
control.
I distinctly remember that we had one car twice. There was a remote control
The
car
flip one.
that had big wheels in the back, small wheels in the front, and it could flip
wonder
over
what that
and
was
it would
called.
run on either side. I
was by
distinctly
Tyco.
remember we had it twice because it broke
I never
once.
got the point of
and
that toy, and I'd never liked to play with it because it was impossible to actually.
Well, you don't
control.
actually steer
if
it.
you were great at
You
it.
literally just push the button and it just did whatever
Yeah.
you want.
So that was one of my favorites. I love that car enough that whenever it broke, I asked for it again, like for Christmas or something,
I
and got
hated
it.
that one. Just because I wanted a car that like realistically drove.
Yeah, nothing about
And
that was
one
realistic.
did not like it. Just
Yeah.
flipped around and just did whatever it thought. And
Tell my mom
Yeah.
you said that.
Yeah.
She's gonna be
I
really mad 'cause
wanted-
she bought it twice.
I
for
wasn't
us.
like I
She
was
bought it
more
twice.
of a
Well, I think it
real.
was for me the second time.
I was more
but-
of a realist. Like I wanted a legit car, and I wanted a car that could like operate like a real car and go as fast as it could, or as fast as possible.
Andrew wants like a minivan of a remote control.
Andrew wanted a mini
Be
Kia
awesome.
Sedona.
But the last RC thing that we wanted to talk about was RC Sproul. Because I don't know if there's any other RC thing.
If I could Google it, but
but,
probably not.
RC.
RC things.
RC Sproul was the last thing we wanted to talk about. You probably know who RC Sproul is, I'd imagine. He is one of the most influential writers, pastors, theologians that has been alive in our lifetime, which is really incredible. Sometimes I kind of think about that. Like most of the theologians you read and stuff, a lot of them are dead. And it's really quite amazing that we had somebody in our lifetime that wrote as many profound things as R.C. Sproul did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I always loved because he was very theologically, obviously, but he made it very much anyone could read it.
Yeah.
Anyone could understand it, or even anyone could discuss it. Like his point was saying, "Hey, we're gonna get these resources down to you." Like anyone can pick up a John commentary, his commentary on John, or any of his. They're fairly simple
Yeah.
to read,
Mm-hmm.
and all of his resources on Ligonier. And if you didn't know this, just a little plug. Most of them are all on Amazon Prime for free from Ligonier. Like the Pilgrim's Progress thing is for free on Ligonier. Listen to it, watch it.
Yeah,
and,
Amazon
like,
Prime Video has a
yeah,
bunch of his stuff.
and like he always said this, and he's very real and the way he always presents himself was very humble.
yeah.
And like it was very sad actually whenever I learned he passed because like I know growing up I read a lot of his books.
Yeah.
And even though I never met the guy, I just like, man, he definitely shaped. Even though I'm not a Presbyterian, he did a lot for me growing up and just with my faith. More so than probably a lot of other people.
Yeah,
Just reading, except for my local church, I would say.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I think that he is one of the more influential authors I've ever read. And something you said really makes me think about lessons I learned from his life. How he brought this theology of God's holiness, of God's sovereignty, of God's goodness. He brought all those things down to a very digestible tangible level. Like I remember reading books of his when I was 7th, 8th, 9th grade. Didn't know much about anything, but it was so easy to read his books. And I think that is something we should care about. Like when I'm thinking about ministry, I don't want to have a church that just simply teaches people at seminary level.
Yeah.
I want to have a church that gives people seminary level theology, but elementary level people can get it.
Mhm.
And it's easy for anyone to understand. Because that's good in the humility that you talked about. He wasn't a dude that walked around starting fights, starting contentions. He wasn't a dude that was proud to talk to anyone who knew him. He was like this happy-go-lucky, humble, quote unquote regular person.
Mhm.
And we can take ourselves too seriously. And this is a dude that wrote so many books.
Yeah.
He had so many lectures, so many sermon series. He was famous, all these things. He didn't let it get to him. And yet we can take ourselves so seriously for much smaller accomplishments, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, Ligonier is huge.
Yeah.
And they get these conferences and just like the reach. I mean, him and John MacArthur are probably the two biggest things.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not even like John MacArthur's a solid guy and I like him.
Mhm.
But he's not as much of a, I don't know what the word I want to use is, but people for the most part don't dislike RC Sproul. They might dislike
Yeah.
his theology, but like he's
Yeah.
not a divisive character.
No, yeah,
Mhm.
he's very congenial.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best word I can use for it.
Yeah,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and he always still cared about his local church, and that's the one thing he always presented when reading through things. It seemed like he wanted to get things. He made study guides fairly well available through his ministry and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And his podcast was very solid, Renewing Your Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone could listen to it. And they were just the first things I had as far as a theologian, because that's what my grandpa had.
yeah,
That was actually deep theology that I could read and actually still understand, and still to this day can read and grow.
Mhm.
yeah. And we're not talking about this tonight just to talk about how cool he was, but the lessons we got from him.
Mm-hmm.
Like the lessons of humility. Like, all right, maybe you have great theology, maybe you've studied a lot, maybe you've read the Bible a lot, but do you conduct yourself in a way where you're humble with other people, where you are peaceful and peaceable to other people?
And can you communicate to 10 other people? That was one thing. Like, Andrew, I'll let you jump in a second if you got
Yeah.
a thing around it. But there's something that he could go in the fact of it, and it says, I was going through a study on by faith alone. I was watching through it, and he goes, so we get through this justification by faith alone, and he goes, I'm going to ask a deep theological question here, and he goes, so what?
Mhm.
And I've talked to the people who do small groups or whatever, even myself, and I sat there and said, why? Like I was talking to him, and I'm like, why is this important to you? Like, why is it important? Like, sometimes don't reinvent the room
Mhm.
here. Just let the kids think and mull it over and say, so what? If Christ is the high priest?
Yeah.
So what if you're justified by faith alone? What does that really mean?
Yeah.
Just let it sit and then let it be kind of awkward and just pause.
I mean,
Mm.
the thing I think about is just that, he takes like from he's done a lot as far as a deep theologian, and a lot of work goes, but yeah, he gets it down to the applicable level.
Mhm.
And it's just like he doesn't sugarcoat things. He doesn't beat around the bush. He doesn't use a lot of times he wasn't using a lot of words when a few words would
Mhm.
suffice.
Yeah.
And that's where it was really good to understand. And yeah, it's just crazy to think about how he communicated very effectively, I would say, overall.
Mhm. Yeah, he was a great teacher because he was a great pastor, and that is a word of advice for me as somebody who eventually wants to be pastoring is stop wanting to be a celebrity pastor, stop wanting to be a great pastor, or I should say stop wanting to be a well-known pastor or a well thought of one, but
Yeah.
start wanting to be a good pastor to your church and let God do whatever he wants with that. And that's applicable to us as we think about the lives that we lead. Like, stop wanting to be quote unquote extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Just be faithful where you are, obey God's standards, and study his word, and be faithful to your family, and watch what God does with that.
Well, that's exemplifying, like, because if you are going to step into pastoral leadership, like, you are directly responsible for shepherding your flock.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a commandment of pastors. And so, like, he really exemplified that, to a T, I would say,
Yeah.
as far as caring for his flock.
Yeah.
And doing that,
Well,
very well.
And also one thing that, like, in this age of I'm not gonna say anything wrong with the Me Too movement, just in general, with everything going on in the world, like, he's one of the few people, and I haven't heard for him personally, like, yeah, people in the church, obviously stuff has happened, but from a controversy standpoint, like, he seemed and
Mhm.
still is pretty much a man of integrity. I haven't seen anything come out otherwise. And that's something in an age where everything is really online and you
Yeah.
can find anything on anyone within a click on Google. It's pretty cool to say, man,
Largely
like,
unheard of,
integrity
yeah.
is still an important feature, especially
Yep.
in someone in ministry. Like, I
Yeah.
was listening to someone the other day talking about, like, they should be able to trust their kids with you.
Mm-hmm.
Or their wives. You just like entrust these people to your care because that's what you're called to do, is care for the people. First off in your local body, and then who knows what God can do with that.
Yeah.
And what he does do with that.
It makes me think, am I living with that level of integrity? Is that a priority for me in my life like it was for him? And a quote that RC Sproul transition a little bit, another quote that RC Sproul has that has been of great value to me over the years. And he's also got a book that's similar along these lines called, I believe it's something about the promise keeping God or something like that. I might have to double check the title of that, but it's a book I've wanted to finish for a while. But he has this quote: "We are secure not because we hold tightly to Jesus, but because he holds tightly to us."
Mm-hmm.
And the number of times in my life where that has been a great encouragement. It's too many
Many
to count. The Promises of God by RC Sproul. Highly recommend that book. But that's indicative of the theology that he brought, that God used him to bring into my life, of the reliance upon him and not a reliance upon myself anymore. A reliance upon his sovereignty and understanding of that sovereignty, and not in a merely intellectual way, but his sovereignty in a very personal way. Like he holds tightly to me. Like he's loving and he's gracious to hold tightly to me. And my life, my walk with him is not about the strength that I muster and the amount of perfection I can attain, but it's about Christ holding tightly to me.
I'd say the biggest, like, one of the quotes that's really kind of stuck with me, I guess, going off of that, is credited with, "To know that God knows everything about me and yet loves me is indeed my ultimate consolation." And that's just something like it's incredibly humbling, and it just knocks you down a peg or two to know, like, just the depravity of being a human, and that's just something that he, like I said before, he did not beat around the bush as far as
You knew where he stood.
confronting that you are born in sin and that is a part of your nature, and just total reliance on Christ, that for all and in all, that I continue to hold with me. So that's just one thing that's stuck.
Yeah, that's what, going back to that one thing. Like that's one thing I heard a Sammy Rhodes quote the other day. I was thinking about it, and I said it constantly. I was like, "What we all want is to be known and accepted," and that's something like with what you're reading. Yeah, I want to be fully known and fully loved anyway. And he presented that gospel well, and I hope that I present that gospel well, because that is what Christ has done. I hope I live that out in my own life, and actually apply it and remember it in the moments where we don't always remember things, which it happens.
Yeah.
But I think also something that, just thinking back, like he seemed like a pretty jovial guy. Like,
Absolutely.
Most of the times I've seen him is like he was still smiling or laughing in a lot of ways, even when he was in panels or whatnot. Like like his theology brought him joy.
Even when he was doing panels with breathing tubes in his nose.
Yeah.
Like later on in his life.
Like that was something I was, because I remember watching things like wow, like he still seems fairly happy, and like would I be that happy? Probably not. Or like, does this actually mean like this much to me that I want to present this and actually be this happy about it?
Yeah.
To anyone, much less like a Christian, much less a non-Christian.
Yeah, there's something really powerful there about the reality of our theology moving from our intellectual side to our practical, everyday, emotional, real life side. And that's something that he clearly taught. Like the theology of the Reformation and everything was not something that was simply to instruct your mind, but it was to inform your spirit. And it was to transform us, and it was to make us humble, to make us happy, to make us wise, to make us obedient. It was all those things. And so often we can short circuit the theology that we study, trying to want it. All right, I just want to be made happy, or I just want to be made smarter, or I just want to be this, or I just want to be that. But when we discover God's truth, it affects every portion of our lives. And if it's true, and we understand it properly, it brings a very distinct joy to us that we can get otherwise. It's something, like you pointed out, Jeremy, something that I think of when I think of RC.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a book that is probably maybe his most widely read, is The Holiness of God by RC Sproul. Really recommend that book. A very simple primer to a bigger theology of God is what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And a deeper understanding of God, and to begin to understand these kind of things on a higher level is kind of a trite way to say it, but to really begin to study God, the book The Holiness of God is really, really useful for that. There's a panel where somebody asked a question. It was a Q&A panel at some kind of conference, and somebody asked a question like, why was God's punishment of Adam and Eve so harsh whenever they sinned? And RC Sproul famously said, "What's wrong with you people?" in response to that question. Because he says, like, we don't understand God's holiness today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That God tells them, if you eat of this, you'll die.
Mm-hmm.
And he's perfectly holy. There's never been any impurity at all anywhere until this moment. And then God still, instead of killing them, he just sends them out of the garden. He gives them food to eat. He covers their shame. He does all these things. And yet our human brains still think, why is that so
wow,
harsh?
that was harsh. Yeah.
Yeah. And that just goes to show how we don't have a very high view of God.
Yeah.
It's not our default.
And he tried to communicate that a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that if you just stay on that side of things, then you can fall into an incomplete picture of God, because maybe you fall into a picture of God not having any genuine love for believers, for his people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why R.C. Sproul wrote both, the promises of God,
Chosen by God, loved
by God, loved by
holiness of
God, pleasing God, and the holiness of God. He wrote all of those things. And we need a fully formed picture of God.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to read the books, just you find this in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, read through the whole Bible and get a fully formed picture of God. Recognize that he's holy, that he's perfect, that he doesn't owe grace to anyone. And then also realize he gives grace to you, and he cares for you, he provides for you, and he loves you.
Yeah.
That lesson is not something that we, in the world that we live in today, we normally just minimize God's holiness.
Mm-hmm.
And if you minimize God's holiness, then you default to minimizing the horribleness of sin. Or if you minimize the horribleness of sin, I don't even know if that's a word, horribleness, but if you minimize it, then you are minimizing the holiness of God. Those two things go together.
Mm.
And we need to guard against that, because if the holiness of God is minimized and sin's horrificness is minimized, then grace cannot be amplified. And we need to remember how vast grace is for us. And it is fully restorative, but we also came to us. He has a quote about, he says how God did not throw a life preserver to a drowning person. He goes down to the bottom of the sea, pulls a corpse from the bottom of the sea, takes him up on the bank, and breathes into him the breath of life and makes him alive. That is the understanding of God's holiness, our sinfulness, and the magnitude of his grace that we really need to understand.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, we don't.
we struggle with that quite a bit.
We do. And that's something that, I mean, read your Bible, pray, and learn more about God, and that the Holy Spirit's going to guide us to understand that more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that. That's going to transform us. That's the gospel truth, right? That's the gospel truth that's going to transform us and renew us in the image of Christ.
I think we learned a lot from him, and we'll miss him, but we're looking forward to seeing him again someday. That's the exciting part of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think first we get to see our Savior, and second we get to actually talk to people who formed us that we probably haven't even had the conversation with, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But we know we're going to a place where there is no more tears or sickness.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So we get to look forward to that hope today. That's exciting.
Yep.
Living out our faith today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
All right.
all we got. That's pretty much it. This is a quick episode.
This is a quick episode. This was an improvised episode.
Yeah.
This was
We just felt
last
like
minute
tonight.
episode.
We just
this-
wanted to record
yeah.
one more.
We just wanted to record one more,
Hope you
and
enjoy the free
We were on
content.
a roll.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? If you didn't like it, this is still free. So
As long as it's free, you can.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like you can complain, but you know,
How much
Uh,
can you complain about free?
no. If you did like it, share, subscribe, and tell somebody about it. And you know, reviewing does help us. I don't just say like. I probably won't say that at the end of every episode, even though it feels like I say that at the end of every episode, but it does help us. More people hear us. Just one little review really boosts you in all the rankings. And
give us any feedback if RC is
Yeah.
like impacted
Comment.
or
comment on this episode
Yeah.
wherever you're listening.
impacted in any way, or you take anything away from
Best-
what we said maybe that led
Yeah.
you down something, that'd be good.
Best sermon you've heard from him. Best book he wrote. Best quote.
And if
share
we
it.
just introduced you to him, then dive in.
Yeah, Holiness of God would be my first pick for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you have any other topics, feel free to email us. We'll talk about them when you get some time.
Yeah.
Or put them on our Facebook page. Whatever. We will do
Yeah.
our best to talk about whatever. We like talking. And
Yeah.
Especially us.
That's
three.
kind of the whole point of this.
We just
Yeah.
want to talk, and we want an excuse to talk, and we want. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Even if no
Pretty
one
much
listens,
it.
we have fun doing this.
Last
so-
recommendation would be any of RC Sproul's commentaries.
Yeah, they're all good.
If you go
Mhm.
online, you're reading through the Bible, whatever book you're in right now, Google RC Sproul commentary on blank.
Very helpful.
It'll be super
they have
helpful.
a bunch of other
Yeah.
helpful links on Legionnaires' website too, which other good commentaries.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
if you ever I want a commentary on something, look at Legionnaires' website because
Yeah.
they will look and give you some solid ones.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Not that you can't do that with Google, but it's a little bit better of a search
Yeah.
engine in my opinion, or at
All
least
right.
look through there first.
Well,
Mhm.
Andrew, do you have any recos for anything?
No, I was gonna recommend the commentary, but
all right.
was
well,
like-
we already recommended
we
that.
already hit it.
Commentary as it is.
Yeah.
That's the recommendation.
Do your laundry.
Do your laundry.
Important.
There's another recommendation.
There you go.
Get it done.
I hate doing laundry,
Fold it.
but yeah,
yeah,
good.
and
It just kind of sits.
I'm fine with it as far as
That's-
household
that's
chores
the
go.
Would. You're the
chore.
real MVP.
that is
here.
the chore that I hate doing the
I hate-
most.
see, I'd
I will
rather-
do dishes for days
Okay,
rather than do
dishes,
laundry.
bathroom. If you have to choose right now, quick take, hot takes. Dishes, bathrooms, or laundry. Which one are you gonna
Dishes.
do? Andrew says dishes.
Oh, not
100%.
bathroom.
Not
laundry.
Okay, laundry. I
Yeah.
would say dishes.
I do dishes.
They're just
100%.
easier and quicker.
every single day.
Yeah.
And
I
they're-
mean, we already kind of get in that routine because Kaylee predominantly cooks and I clean. Typically, I take
Oh.
up that. So like, she makes the dinner, I clean up for the dinner. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm looking, and we are off the rails.
yep.
That's
So-
what happens. That's cool. That's what we can do though.
That's what happens at this time of night. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.